Hi, my name is Paul Gentile from Merck Employees Federal Credit Union. I want to welcome you to our special webinar on elder financial abuse. This is a major problem in the country. It's a problem we see here at the credit union, and we're trying to shed some light for our members on what to look for, what to watch out for, and really how to protect yourself from these scams. I'm pleased to welcome with us today, we have Lisa Schifferly from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Lisa is a senior policy analyst with the Office for Older Americans at the CFPB. So, Lisa, before we get started on the topic, just wondering if you can give some perspective, some background on what the CFPB is and what you do. I think it's one of our newest federal agencies in the U.S. government. And can you talk a little bit about what the CFPB is and then about your department?
Sure, definitely. And we at the CFPB appreciate this opportunity to let people know about how to recognize and prevent elder financial abuse. So thanks for inviting us here today. If people haven't heard of the CFPB or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, we are a U.S. federal government agency. Like he said, we were just created about 10 years ago to make sure that banks and lenders treat you fairly. So if you think that your bank, credit card company, or home or mortgage lender treated you unfairly, then that's what the CFPB is here for. And I work in what's called the Office for Older Americans. So in my office, we specifically focus on older Americans and do research, policy, and outreach to help protect older consumers from financial harm and also to help older people make sound financial decisions as they age.
Great, terrific. So, Lisa, we're talking about elder financial abuse. It's a big problem. Can you put into scope sort of how big a problem this is in our country today?
Yes, as you said, elder financial abuse is a very serious problem. And with the pandemic and the increased social isolation during the pandemic, we're all at greater risk for fraud. And when we're talking about elder financial exploitation, what we mean is basically illegal or improper use of an older person's financial assets. So it can be done by strangers, like phone scams that we've probably all gotten calls like that, or it can be done by people you know, including caregivers. And the estimates of the cost of elder financial abuse, they vary very widely based on different studies, from about $2.9 billion in a MetLife study to $36 billion in a TrueLink study. Now, even though the numbers vary a lot, one thing that studies are pretty clear on is that if people know how to recognize a particular scam, then they're much less likely to lose money to that scam. So it's great to have events like this to let people know about the scams so that hopefully fewer people will lose money to them.
Sure. So let's talk about the scams themselves. What are some of the more common scams that we're seeing today perpetrated against our elder Americans?
One of the biggest scams that we're seeing across all age groups are imposter scams, and they're the number one scam according to the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Sentinel data. And if you look at older adults in particular, one type of imposter scam that's particularly prevalent are what we call romance scams. Those are the highest dollar loss scam for older adults. And that's basically when someone says they love you, then they ask for money for an emergency or travel. And usually you send the money by wire transfer or gift card. And then unfortunately, the money is gone, and often so is the person. And people are losing tens of thousands of dollars to these scams. So It's really important to know not to send money to a love interest who you've never met in person.
Absolutely. And yes, we've seen a few of those here at the credit union. I think you made an important point. It's either the money's wired to that person, and there are more procedures institutions can put in place to try to stop that. But secondly, they are using gift cards. And the challenge there is when we've had some members who were scammed, they say, well, how do I get my money back? And really at that point, once you buy the gift card and send it, there really is nothing anybody can do.
Exactly. That's why the scammers use those methods. They know if you send by wire or gift card, then they're going to get the money. It's going to be very hard for you to get it back. So those are definitely big red flags of scams.
Sure.
Another big scam that is affecting older people and people across all age groups, but this is the most prevalent scam that affects older adults. It's something we call a tech support scam. And it can happen either with a pop-up message saying that you have a virus on your computer, or sometimes you'll get a phone call and they're saying that they need to remote into your computer. And if you give over control of your computer, then they can steal your personal information. Sometimes they'll try to sell you a useless software package, and other times they are trying to remote in to get your personal information.
Right.
And again, they may ask you to pay by gift card or even by Apple gift cards, which may sound more believable if you're dealing with an Apple computer, but that's again a red flag of the scam.
Sure. Sadly, we've seen a few of those, and the member, exactly how you said, they were asked if they could remote in and that there was something wrong with their computer. And the member's really convinced that they cannot get back onto their computer unless they make payment. In the case that we saw, it was an Amazon and Apple gift cards, and it was to the tune of $2,000 or $3,000. So again, when you're doing that with a gift card, that money will not be recovered. So tech support scam, very concerning. The imposter scam, the romance scam. What other types of scams?
There are a whole host of other imposters. There are government imposters as well, where people pretend to be Social Security or the IRS. They may ask for your Social Security number or for other financial information and then use it for identity theft. So big things to know are that the federal government's not calling you out of the blue to threaten you, saying that you owe back taxes. They'll send something in writing first. And Social Security shouldn't be calling you asking for your Social Security number. They're not going to call you out of the blue either. And these government agencies never, ever ask for payment by gift card. That is not a way the government accepts payment. So if someone's calls claiming to be from the government and asking for a gift card, that's a scam.
So Lisa, let's talk about the phone, because that's where we see a lot of this happen. I know we think about email and online, but the phone seems to be really a big source for the scammers. Talk about that. So can somebody see a caller ID and it may not be what it says it is? It may say IRS, it may say Medicare, it may say some other agency or reputable organization. How do you defend against that?
You're exactly right. People can do what's called spoofing of phone numbers. So they could be in a whole nother country and make it look like they're calling from the IRS. And we know for a fact that scammers have been spoofing government agencies in particular. So they've been spoofing Social Security, and it'll have Social Security's name and their real phone number will pop up on your phone, but it is not them. So you really cannot trust caller ID. And the big thing to know is if someone's calling you, you don't know who it is. Even if caller ID makes it look like it's the government or look like it's your grandchild or look like it's someone in your area code, because that's another thing they do is they spoof numbers near you to make it more believable. But if someone's calling you, you do not know who it is, no matter what the caller ID says. So you should not give any personal information or money on an incoming call. You should call back at a number that you know to be correct, not the number that they're giving you on the call, because that'll just lead you back to the scammer, but a number that you know to be correct for your bank or your grandchild or Social Security or whoever it is who says they're calling before you give any information.
Sure. Kind of interesting. We had a member that we called recently, an older member, and their voicemail said basically, if we know you, we do not pick up the phone. Please leave a message. If we know you, we will call you back. If not, we will not. Something to that effect. We got a kick out of it, but actually it's probably very effective. If they're not picking up the phone right away, they want to make sure it is who it is on the end of the line. So that was an interesting take.
Yes, that's basically what I do. I don't have it on the answering machine, but I don't pick up the phone when it rings. I wait to see who it is before I pick up.
Absolutely. So those are from scammers. Unfortunately, some of the other elder financial abuse we see comes from people that the elders know, whether it's family members, friends, somebody they believe is trusted. Talk about that aspect of it. How common is that, and what are some things to be concerned about there?
That's a really good point. Unfortunately, that's exactly right, is that sometimes friends or family members may steal an older person's identity or money or property, especially if they're a caregiver for an older person and they're abusing their role and taking that person's money. So that's why it's really important to choose financial caregivers wisely. And the CFPB, we actually have a new free publication called Considering a Financial Caregiver, Know Your Options. You can find it at consumerfinance.gov/MSEM.
Okay.
And it gives you a list of questions to think about when choosing a financial caregiver, like, do I trust this person? Will they honor my wishes? And also thinking about things like, do they have any drug, alcohol, or gambling problems that might make them susceptible to taking money to fuel those addictions? Because unfortunately, we do know that, a number of people may abuse their authority as power of attorney or financial caregiver if they have these other issues that they need money for. So it's
Right.
really important to choose that caregiver carefully.
So one of the things at Credit Union, we always encourage our members to have their beneficiary account information updated. Make sure they have the correct beneficiaries on there. If anything needs to be changed, make sure that's accurate. What else would you suggest people look at? Whether it's power of attorney, other things. What should they be thinking about with wills, et cetera, in this area to ensure they have the right caregiver or the right process in place?
Well, you've named a number of them. You're right that first people should make sure their beneficiaries are up to date. And if a spouse or loved one passes away, then to make sure to update those beneficiaries. Wills, of course, are important. Most people think of that, but people don't always think about power of attorney and some other tools that you can use to manage your money if you become unable to do so. And it's good to set these up while you still have the capacity to do it. First, there's power of attorney, which probably people have heard about, which just designates someone who will manage your money if you become unable to. The good thing about this is it can just be done with a legal document. So you don't have to go through the expense and the court procedure of getting guardianship.
Sure.
So power of attorney is a good one. There's also something called trusted contacts. And what this does is it lets you designate someone who can get a call from your investment company or other financial institution if the financial institution suspects fraud on your account. So if I had listed, say, my brother as a trusted contact and I suddenly started wiring money, large sums of money overseas, then he would get a call saying, this looks fishy. Why don't you, check on your sister? So that's what a trusted contact does. It doesn't give anyone access to your money, but it does give you that special check so that if you do at some point get involved in a scam, someone who you trust can be notified. I was also going to mention one other tool called Social Security Advanced Designation, which is similar. And that lets you select up to 3 people to manage your Social Security benefits if you become unable to do that. So again, this kind of advanced planning lets you pick the person that you think is best while you're able to do so, rather than, waiting till it's too late and somebody else picks the person.
Sure. I think those are 2 great tips, trusted contacts and Social Security Advanced Designation. Okay, so you talked about some of the concerns to have when you're choosing a caregiver. Make sure it's somebody you trust, they're not having issues. You mentioned drugs, gambling, whatever it may be. But what about the other side? What about the caregiver themselves? Because we do run into that where we have people that come in, they are the caregiver for the older member, and they are trying to do the right thing. They don't always necessarily know what the right thing to do is. What are the responsibilities that a caregiver is really taking on when they agree to be that caregiver for that member?
That's a really good question. And there are, of course, tons of well-meaning caregivers who are doing very important work. In fact, we've heard that as many as 1 in 5 people in the US are now unpaid caregivers for family members. And really our whole system relies on this caregiving. And so to help people who are financial caregivers, the CFPB has designed a whole series of guides called Managing Someone Else's Money Guides, which again, you can find them at consumerfinance.gov/MSEM. And they walk you through your duties. If you're power of attorney, there's one guide. If you're a guardian, there's another guide. There's also a guide for trustees. And then there's a guide for government fiduciaries, like if you're a VA fiduciary or Social Security representative payee. And the thing that all these roles have in common is you have what's called a fiduciary duty, which basically means you have an obligation to manage that person's money and property properly. And there are 4 main points of that. One is to act only in the person's best interest. The second is to manage the money and property carefully. The third is to keep the money and property separate, so don't mix your money with theirs. And the fourth is to keep good records so that basically you can show that you're doing the first three things that I mentioned.
Right. So it is good for those caregivers. Now, it is a big responsibility, and you have to be ready for it. Okay. Lisa, we talked about a lot of the real devious scams, people calling up, trying to take over your computer, doing things like that. But also we hear about, scams that don't sound as devious, something like, you could save money on your power bill if you switch over to this different provider. And I know that confuses people as well. They're used to their one power provider, but there's an alternative. It could be cheaper. How is somebody to know if that's actually legitimate, if it could be cheaper, or if it is something to be concerned about?
Well, first, like you're saying, utility scams are pretty common right now. I keep getting a lot of calls from places that purport to be utility companies offering me better deals. So again, like I said earlier, if someone calls you, you don't know who they are, even if they say they're the utility company. They may not be, even if it says that on your caller ID. So if you really want to check into lowering your utility rates, again, I would call the utility company at the number to be correct. Also, if you get a call from a company you're not sure about, most states have utilities commissions or localities. Sometimes it's done at the county or local level. And you can check if the company is registered with the local utilities commission. You can also check for reviews online of a company and look up the company name and scam.
Sure.
But I'd be very leery right now of any sort of call about lowering your utilities.
Right. And I think the same goes true for mortgages, right? With COVID and the housing market, we've heard
Exactly.
They got a call that they can basically refinance for a tremendously lower rate, no fees, no issues, no documentation. So I got to imagine those are growing now as well.
Those are definitely growing. And in terms of mortgages, there's a big red flag because it's illegal for companies to charge you an upfront fee to reduce or renegotiate your mortgage payment. So if they do, then that's a scam. And then also if they're saying things like, don't pay your mortgage payment, pay it to me instead, or don't correspond with the servicer anymore, those are also huge red flags. And because it is such a big issue right now, like you said, during the pandemic, the CFPB, along with HUD and other federal housing related agencies, have set up a whole website, consumerfinance.gov/housing. And it has lots of great resources, including videos and other information to help people who are behind on their mortgage or behind on their rent, because we know a lot of people are dealing with both of those issues right now. And
Sure.
The housing insecurity crisis is real. So there are steps there that tell you how to get a forbearance or avoid foreclosure, or how to get rental assistance if you're behind.
Sure, absolutely. And just a note to our members, we're happy to help members with refinancing, any mortgage needs, but we would never call proactively and say, hey, do you want to refinance? If you'd want to refinance, you'd have to reach out to us, check out our great rates, but we would not do that proactively. So, okay. And Lisa, one more scam I just want to make sure we don't miss, because I find it something also we hear a lot about, is the so-called pressure scam. Somebody calls up and says, we're with your grandson. He's been arrested. To get him out, we need you to send money. Pressure scams, they call them. So what do they look like, and are they happening a lot?
They are definitely happening a lot, and pressure is a key tactic of scammers because they try to get you to where you aren't thinking straight and where you're worried and you're going to act quickly and then basically make a mistake and send scammer money. So pressure is a key technique, and you described one of those scams that uses it, the family emergency scam, where someone will call and say, Grandma, I'm stuck in another country. I just got in a car accident, or I just got put in jail. I need you to wire me money right away for surgery or for bail. Don't tell mom and dad. So it can be very convincing. They may even glean information about you or your grandkids over social media and toss that in there. But the big thing to know is to first call or text your grandchild or their parent to see if the story is true, even though the scammer is telling you not to do that. If you do call or text them, you may find that they're just fine and in math class and not really in another country. So it's important to check it out first before wiring the money and not let them pressure you. Take your time anytime someone's trying to pressure you.
Sure, absolutely. And, Lisa, one interesting thing we ran into is we find the scammers are very bold. They're very emboldened. We had a member who was scammed by the text scam, and the scammer actually called while the police were there interviewing them. The detective was there, and the detective got on the phone with the scammer, and they weren't worried in the least. They seem emboldened. Is it hard to catch these folks? Is that why they're so emboldened? They're not worried about getting arrested or getting in trouble? Can you speak to that?
I mean, it can be hard to catch them. I mean, a lot of them are located overseas, which makes it harder to prosecute them.
Right.
But there are effective examples of the federal government and state and local government catching and shutting down these scammers. I know the Federal Trade Commission and Department of Justice and others work very hard on this. To give one example, the IRS imposter scam used to be a huge, huge issue. You'd get those calls almost once a week saying that you owed back taxes. And then together, DOJ, FTC, and the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration were able to shut down several call centers overseas. And after that, you saw the number of these calls just plummet. If you look at FTC data or BBB data. So, law enforcement is trying to get a handle on it and shut down as many of these scammers as possible. That's why it's important for people to report these scams too, because by reporting them, then government can see that this is a trend. It's not just one person getting the call, but if we get 100 reports about the same phone number and same type of call, then federal law enforcement or even state or local law enforcement can investigate if they're able to see the trends. So it is important for people to report them. And
right. So let's talk about reporting. I know if we suspected the credit and we have a responsibility, we'll report to some local agencies if we think there's something happening. But if it's the consumer themselves and they think they're being scammed, where are some of the places they should go to report that?
The main place to report scams is to the Federal Trade Commission at reportfraud.ftc.gov. Now, if you're having problems with banks like a mortgage lending scam, then you can report them to us at the CFPB at consumerfinance.gov/complaint. Also, if it's an older person who is being exploited, another option is to contact Adult Protective Services, and you can find contact information for them at eldercare.acl.gov or by calling 1-800-677-1116. That Elder Care Locator also is a really good resource for a lot of different resources for older adults. So it's a great one for people to know about. And of course, in terms of reporting, if anyone's in immediate physical danger, then call 911.
Sure, absolutely. So that's terrific information. So Lisa, we're talking about all these in the scope of elder financial abuse, but really these can happen to anybody. But elders are certainly being targeted. I think they're being targeted by the scammers for various reasons. But all these scams you've mentioned, I'm sure they could happen to anybody, correct?
Absolutely. It can happen to anyone, any age, any socioeconomic status, any race. In terms of age, it's very interesting that older adults are actually the least likely of any age group to report losing money to scams. But when they do report losing money to scams, then their financial losses were greater than what younger people reported. So that's something that people don't obviously expect all the time.
Sure.
But that is what the statistics show. But as you said, it basically can happen to anyone at any time. So people should not feel ashamed or embarrassed to report scams. And actually, reporting scams can help somebody else avoid a scam, because the more we know about scams, the more we as the government can shut down scams. And the more we talk about scams, the more other older adults and other people across the age spectrum can know about them and better avoid them.
Right, absolutely. You have to speak up so we can help others. That's terrific. Okay, Lisa, I want to thank you. I thought it was a great session. You provided some really interesting information. For the members out there, we are going to sum up the various websites Lisa cited to report elder financial abuse, also the different tools and resources to research this important topic. So I appreciate everybody being with us. For our members, we will be back with other webinars. This was our first webinar because we see this as such a important issue and something that we see at the credit union. We really want to help out and make sure our members are safe and that their money is safe. So thank you very much. Take care, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.